There are questions I've been asked my entire life. Now I want to face them.
I think it's important to talk about it, and it's important to talk about mental health in general.
I need to protect him, especially from what happened to me.
If we're not here to help one another, what are we here for?
Every young girl just wants to be normal.
I want to know why anyone would choose to go through with it.
When people, say, what do you do? I always mention that I volunteer at Lifeline, and quite often that takes the conversation in a new direction. People really want to talk about that kind of thing, but they just don't know how otherwise.
No one in my life knows that I attempted. It's very difficult to explain to anyone, let alone your family, your friends, who are going to be asking why.
I thought it was something that I had to hide. I basically didn't think it was something that was okay to talk about.
No one had ever sort of just sat there with me and let me just debrief whatever was going on inside my head.
It's not the done thing in society to talk about suicide and being touched by people who have killed themselves or being touched by mental illness or going through struggles. It's not what you talk about. You want to talk about the happy, shiny world that you present on like Facebook or something, but that's not real for most people. It's just sort of a facade.
My parents got divorced in my first year out of high school, and it was a pretty abrupt thing, didn't really see it coming. It was a very kind of upsetting thing for myself and my family. I kind of tried to ignore it, ran away from it a bit, kind of moved more into my social scene and my friends. Being the party guy, the one who's like fun and nothing wrong, very carefree. It was just so much easier just to pretend to just fall into that kind of mask.
We're raised as men, as boys, to bottle up our feelings and not talk about it because you're weak, and it ends up causing a lot of damage. But the most trouble I had was in year 8 in a changing room that often had older boys. So that was where I copped a lot of flack, being a fat guy, I guess. So that very much contributed to this feeling of worthlessness and lack of control, and it got to the point where I made it about my image, and that ingrained it into me that I was the fat guy. I was poppin' fresh, or whatever name was hot at the time.
Early year 7, I was bullied for being different. I was engaging in self-harming behaviours, and also I had an eating disorder. And it wasn't until later on that I discovered that I was actually a victim of child sexual abuse. I'd been at uni, the teacher drew a diagram on the board that kind of related to me. It was basically a triangle, and at the top of that it was self-harm. And then on one corner it was eating disorders, and then abuse. And then in the middle it said mental health issues. And that diagram, it sort of hit me like a ton of bricks, really sent me quite off the edge.
I've never worked nights before, so for me it's just so interesting to see how many people are awake and that the world still operates in the middle of the night when most people are fast asleep. We start at midnight. So most of us are there by 2:45, 10:02, and it goes till 6 a.m. It's pretty full on the whole night. As soon as you've set yourself up, the phone is ringing. There's 10 of us on and 2 supervisors. Hello, this is Lifeline. May we help you? You're worried that he may have harmed himself or attempted to, or he might be injured somewhere. You don't know where he is.
Hello, this is Lifeline. May we help? Would you like to talk to me about it? Well, sometimes it's easier to talk about things when you're anonymous. You don't have to see the person again.
These 2 girlfriends of mine, they basically said, you know, we're worried about you. Because I'd gotten really thin, and they just said, look, we're just concerned that you're partying too much. You know, maybe you should consider trying to, you know, make a change. And it did hit home. And I started going to the gym more, trying to eat healthy, tried to remove as much as possible the negative aspects of life that I was engaging in. I sat back and I was just like, shit, everything's not as good as I thought it was, because now I had time to actually process the whole thing, and that kind of really made me feel upset and angry at what was happening. That's definitely where it began.
Eventually it became too much, and I started self-harming. I figured the best way to release pain was to do it through a physical method. And that seemed like the logical step. It was completely irrational, but it worked for a time. Instead of feeling this despair inside, it was, you know, physical pain. And my focus would be drawn away for a time, and then my emotional pain would come back and I'd do it again. And I actually became very reliant on it for a time. There was a day in year 8 where a friend of mine went to the school counsellor and said, you know, he's self-harming, and my family were brought in about it. At the time, I think they were angry. It seemed like they were angry and shocked. Why would you do that? You know, why wouldn't you talk to us about it? Rather than, it felt like they didn't understand. They were taking it very personally, and it wasn't personal about them, it was about me and how I was dealing with things.
The next thing I do remember was I was standing at the gap and just looking over, and I was crying. I'd never really thought about suicide as an option. All I knew, I felt like things were hopeless. I felt really quite emotional that I'd been working really hard to try and stop these behaviours from occurring, and yet I still felt like crap.
Hello, this is Lifeline. May we help? Hi there. What's happening for you tonight? Yeah. And have you hurt yourself tonight?
It's hard in the middle of the night, isn't it?
Okay.
You are worried.
So you don't self-harm often, but you've needed microsurgery for it in the past, which tells me that it was pretty bad. Yeah. You do. You sound afraid. Yeah. Well, perhaps then we can think of what else you could do to keep yourself safe. Just to get through until morning at least. So while we're on the phone now, do you think you can get rid of that rope and put it outside, or put it up somewhere high, or where it's not so accessible? Don't. Okay. Well, it's in the living room now, so can you stay where you are in the bedroom? Okay. That's good to hear. Can you promise me that you won't hurt yourself for the rest of tonight, and then in the morning, or if you do feel like hurting yourself, you'll give us a call before you do anything. We can work out where to go from there. Okay, you are sounding a little bit better, but please do give us a ring back if the thoughts or the desires to end your life come back, okay? All right, you take care of yourself. Good night. It is hard not knowing what happened, but at least you know you've done the best you can, and I mean, she promised she'd keep herself safe, and I believe her when she said she'll call back if the thoughts return.
Having just turned 18, I started self-medicating with alcohol, and that threw me down a path of further depression. And there was just one day where it was the worst day, and I thought, I may have heard it, I don't know. I heard something scream, "Chris," you know, out of nowhere. And that sent me into a spiral. And then it was, you know, you failed, you don't deserve this. And that was the first time that I really felt like there was no escaping how I felt. It was very much like a snowball running down a mountain, picking up pace and just size and crushing me.
So I basically went on one particularly large night of drinking, and that was the night when I had a bit of a blackout. And I don't actually remember like too much of it, but I just remember this overwhelming sense of loss or sadness or just worthlessness. So essentially, like, I took an attempt on my own life.
I was resigned to this was it, this was the end. This was the most serious of those times, because I did not only establish a plan, but I actively tried. I finished drinking. I fell asleep. I figured that would be it. I figured that the culmination of the three, the self-harm, the tablets and the alcohol, would have been enough.
So this is just the straw that's broken the camel's back? It's just too hard to stay. And you said before you were thinking about hanging yourself? You've got the means to do that, have you? I'm wondering, how would you feel if we were to help you out by calling the emergency services for you? Yeah? Yeah. Are you on your own right now? You got your family at home? They're all sleeping. You can do it. It's just it feels like you can't right now. That's why we're going to, get you some help right now.
You might not actually have ever thought about taking your own life, but the emotion that you feel is just that bad that feels like there's no way out of it. I was standing with my arms just on the fence, just looking over, sort of thing. And next thing I knew, I heard, "Are you okay?" The voice startled me at first because I thought I was alone. I wanted to be alone. And then I turned around and then I saw him, and then he had noticed I was crying, and he just sort of said to me, "I'm Don." He sort of just asked who I was and my name and what brought me there, and I sort of explained to him that I didn't know why I was there. And from that, he sort of came out and said to me, "Look, I've been watching and you've been here for quite a while now, and you obviously are looking you look quite distressed and quite uncertain. And I sort of asked him, you know, what gave him that idea, and he actually pointed out that I'd been pacing along the fence line, just sort of like I was thinking about something, and he sort of said, you know, do you want to talk? And I just sort of nodded, and he said, well, how about we talk at my place? We'll sit outside so you can still see the views, but we'll just sit.
But that's a temporary feeling. It's not always going to feel this bad. No, you won't, because you're on the phone to me and the police are coming. So we're just going to keep talking. We're not going to go near any ropes. Do you think you want to wake your wife up? Or do you want to do that while we're still on the phone? Okay. Hi there, you've just woken up, haven't you? Yeah, it's Lifeline here. Your husband has called us because he's really, really scared that he's going to take his life. So, yeah, we've called the emergency services and the police are on their way and they'll take him up to hospital. You know, he's really struggling and he's really just gone right down, you know, into a really bad space. Yeah, he rang us because he was frightened he was going to do it. Police are here, are they? That's wonderful. Oh, do you want me to talk to the police at all? Okay then. Oh, hi, it's Lifeline here. The gentleman just called us earlier and he was really, really suicidal and frightened, you know, that he was going to hang himself. Yeah, okay. All right, well, thanks for that. Okay, bye-bye.
Oh, that was a long call, wasn't it?
It was a long call. How long was it?
It came in at 3 and it's about 4, so it's about an hour and 4 minutes. Yeah. But it's just that constant being alert. You know, just have a bit of a break. Go outside.
When I woke up in hospital, I didn't actually know what had happened. I obviously knew something really bad had happened from what I could see. 4 broken ribs, 2 vertebrae in my spine, cracked skull, shattered shoulder blade, and collapsed lung. And I just remember my cousin had drawn up a keyboard for me, and because I could only move my, I think it was my left arm. I asked what happened, typed that onto the keyboard, and then he answered and said, you know, you've been in an accident. And everyone was just around crying. I was like, can I walk? And they said yes.
But about an hour and a half later, I woke up and threw up everywhere. And that was probably the saviour, getting it all out of my system. I didn't want to die. I felt trapped. I felt helpless. Not to mention how angry and upset I was. It was never about dying. Dying was just a solution to the pain I was feeling.
The part that compelled me to go with him was the fact that he had spent the time out of his own day to sit with me and talk. He sort of said to me, you know, take your time with it. There's no rush. We can be here, you can be here 10 minutes, we could be here 3 hours. Just take your time. I actually never found out his last name until he passed away. And when they put his picture up on the news, and then they referred to him as the Angel of the Gap. And he actually has saved a lot more people than most people would even know about.
I got asked once whether I thought suicide was like the brave option or the cowardly option, and it took me a while to figure out my answer, but I don't think it's either. I think it's something that you do when you're really, really desperate and you can't see any other way out. And so, and my job, I guess, is to help people see the alternatives and to get through it. I mean, when I was younger, I had a friend who tried several times to take his own life, and I just hated the thought that that you could feel so alone, I guess. I didn't want people to feel that way. I mean, I've lost other friends to suicide, but that was sort of the first, I think, my best friend. And I was the only one he'd talk to, so it was hard. Because I felt all responsible, and I'm like, oh, I don't actually know what I'm doing.
Hello, this is Lifeline. Maybe help.
It's hard feeling that powerless. You want to help, but you don't know what the magic thing to say or do is. And so it's really hard to watch somebody that you care about, feel that way and not know what you can do to make it better.
I know that my family asked me why. Like, that was a big question initially, why? And it's not something that I clearly understood until a lot longer down the track.
They want to know, and they want to be able to stop it, but you can't give them the magic answer that's going to work. So they're going to keep pushing, and it's going to create not necessarily anger, but this tension that does exist that says we still need that answer, we still need that magic preventative tool that you just don't know. You don't know why. You don't know what set you there.
It was why. Being asked why was kind of like, well, I couldn't tell them that. And then when, if people did say to me, why was I doing it? And I said, I don't know. It was like, oh, it's a really stupid behaviour to do. You could kill yourself. Obviously you're not thinking about the other people in your life who love you and care about you. And these kinds of judgments were coming through non-stop.
I'm trying to explain, I'm hurting, this is why I'm hurting, and they're saying, well, don't, you shouldn't feel that way. That doesn't help anyone. So I kind of stopped talking about it.
I was actually quite embarrassed about the fact that this had happened. I kind of fielded a number of rumours because my parents and my family kept the whole thing very quiet. In hindsight, it did make it a lot harder to talk about it.
Like, I don't develop trust easy, but with Don, it seemed to be this whole different story. I developed that trust rather quickly because of that, the way in which he was the non-judgmental person. He was the person who didn't ask why was I doing this. He didn't judge. He didn't say to me, oh, it's silly, stupid, or why would you do that? But that was the difference between my parents at that time.
Well, parents feel very protective, and if my parents are watching, I'd say it wasn't their fault.
Just letting them talk about their reasons why they want to die. Because often people panic, oh, you don't want to do that, you've got this and this and this, you've got all these reasons to live. But there's also reasons why I don't want to live. And sometimes just talking that through, in their mind then things come up. Oh, yes, well, my kids would be upset, or mum and dad would never get over it. Or so they come up with those reasons for living themselves.
If I was talking to the young version of myself, say, don't party as much, try and deal with the problems that you have. Talk to your friends, talk to your network. If your friends can't help you, find someone who can, maybe an older figure in your life who may have a bit more maturity. I think that's something I would have done differently, and I could have done differently. I do know I want to change the way that it's viewed now, which is that I think it's important to talk about it, and it's important to talk about mental health in general, and if that kind of conversation can help anyone, then I think that's a conversation that has to be had.
I was on the way to university one day and I was about to get on the train and I just happened to glance down the end of the platform and there was this young girl. Just by seeing her on the end of the platform, I was worried. I thought to myself, there's something not right here and I want to do something about it. And so I just walked up to her and I just said, "Are you okay?" And she looked at me and she'd been crying. Immediately it flashed me back to how I was standing there that day when Don approached me. And I just said to her, "I'm back. Who are you? Are you okay?" She, wiped her eyes and, told me her name and then just cried. And I said, "Can I sit down?" And she said, "Yeah." So I sat with her. We were on the platform for most of the day. But eventually, when she did start opening up, she goes, "If I'm not here, I can't see it. I don't have to feel so helpless. I don't have to feel like I'm just watching them go, because I won't be here." I said to her, "Wouldn't you rather be here with them so they know that you love them?" And she went, "Yes."
There was a time at university I gave a presentation on depression, self-harm, and I gave my story. I presented my personal view, what had happened to me, because I figured people would understand. And it was very well received. People came up to me and said, "That was really brave of you." And that was fine. I didn't really want accolades for it, but it was 2-3 days later when I got a message from someone saying, "You getting up there and saying, you telling me your story inspired me to go and get help." And that was the most profound thing that ever happened to me, was helping someone. And that's why I do like to talk about it, because the idea of helping someone is incredible.
At the end of the shift, I like to have a little buffer zone before I go off and do anything else. So I'll go for a little walk and listen to music, or I'll have a little nap, or I like to have a bit of space between Lifeline and going to work, or Lifeline and seeing friends.
The suicide stats in Australia, in every country, are just horrific. And I don't know anybody that hasn't been touched by suicide, that either hasn't felt that way themselves, or hasn't had a family member pass away, or hasn't had a friend, or known somebody at school. I think our job is to keep you safe tonight and to remind people that we care.
You might only be in somebody's life for a really short period of time, but whatever you can do for them during that time, like sitting down and listening to them without judgment, could be the thing that saves their life.